Welcome, everybody, to our webinar Wednesdays for Create Good. This is our last one in this series for 2020, which is a recap of our best content from 2019. And we're very thankful that you're here to join us today. This is a great opportunity for you to expand your skills and really have an opportunity to learn something new from a really great presenter. Yeah, we're just so glad you're here today. I think, especially in this time of the coronavirus, that taking this time to build your professional skills is an amazing thing. So Create Good is an annual nonprofit conference. This is our 6th year, and usually we get to hold it in Durham, North Carolina, and bring nonprofit communicators from all over the country to celebrate and learn from other nonprofit communicators. So this year, we are still forging on. We are having our conference, but this year it'll only be online. So the week of April 20th, which is just a few weeks away, we are presenting live sessions all week long with amazing nonprofit communicators from across the country, and then we're recording those. So everybody who purchases a ticket gets a library of content to learn from amazing folks from all over the country. So tickets are still available, and you can go to creategoodconference.com to get a ticket to that. And again, it is only online, and it'll be an amazing opportunity for you to have access and to learn from some great nonprofit communicators. So I'm Dawn Crawford from BCDC Ideas, and we are an advertising agency that has the amazing gift to be able to just work with nonprofit folks. So we are a jack of all trades and a specialty in nonprofits, and we're really thankful that we get to give back to the community through the Create Good conference. So go forth, create good, and I am going to transition the presenting baton over to Symone, and she will introduce herself and give us some great information about design.
All righty. Thank you so much, Dawn. And thank you all so much for joining us today. So this presentation really was given at the 2019 Create Good conference, and it was about strategy of design. And since this is a communicators conference, I focused strategy of design specifically in marketing and communications. So let me give you a little bit of background information on who I am. So I am Symone Fogg, and I'm a business designer, which really means I apply design thinking, design tools, and design methodologies to business challenges. I started off being a brand designer and illustrator for 7 years. From there, became a designer working with BCDC Ideas, which was an awesome experience. And also being a design manager and strategist for other startups. And soon coming, I'll be working with Forward Cities. So I'll give a little bit more about myself and just what strategies of design really means for me in this section. So personal background. 7 years ago, 2013, I had my first graphic design project. And this was for Genesis Home. And Genesis Home is a homeless shelter in Durham, North Carolina, but they've now, I think, become families moving forward, which they're doing awesome work there. So either way, that was just my first design project. What they asked me to do is create the look and feel of their 25th anniversary event, where they would invite every one of their stakeholders and come together and just talk about Genesis Home and what the future of Genesis Home should be. So this was my first time to really get my designs out there, and I really took their logo and the colors of yellow and blue and ran with it, as you can see, creating characters for their postcards, utilizing yellow and blue in everything I did. I also created a new logo for their 25th anniversary, and then these postcards so that they could actually send them to whoever the stakeholder was, so they could really feel like, oh yeah, I'm a part of this family. I even took it so far to create an Evite invitation, a digital who are you in the Genesis Home family, just a way of seeing where are we are all a family, what does this all mean? So I had a lot of fun working on this project. Problem was, after we created it and after I sent it to them, I didn't follow up or at least help tailor how this design could be used and what the results of the design were. And this was, of course, my first time doing it, so I was a newbie. After that, a few years later, I worked with other nonprofits and startups, and this is an example of a nonprofit I worked with. They were rebranding, and I was working with their marketing director to understand, okay, what's the logo needed, what's the look, and what's the feel. And I gave them tons of logos, different ones. I'd say I start with maybe 4 at one time, and then I got feedback like, no, that's not exactly it. All right, so then I created another 5. No, that's not it. I ended up creating 24 logos for this nonprofit for them to rebrand, right? I'm thinking, okay, either I'm a terrible designer or they don't know what they want. So if anyone can guess, what number do you think they went with? Number 24, number 23? They used none of them. It turns out that they really didn't think about what they were using the rebrand for, if they should rebrand. After working with me for about 3 months' time, they met with their board of directors to realize, oh, actually, we don't need a rebrand. We just have a better understanding of our mission. And that was my first time really thinking, okay, what is design's function when we're utilizing it? When I'm walking in the room as a graphic designer, or as any kind of designer, what's my function? How can I help nonprofits function better? So I knew design could be more than aesthetically pleasing. I can make things look good, sure, but design is meant to do much more than that. And so I studied abroad while I was in college in Copenhagen to learn how design can be made functional. When I was there, I had an awesome time. I spent time with other designers. We worked on a lot of case studies, and I actually branded a gym there. But I won the Design Excellence Award, which is given to one designer every year for their ability to creatively think. And when I asked them why they choose me for this award, out of all those people, they really just said it was because you utilize strategy in your designs in a way that we haven't seen before. They said that the in-depth research I used to decide what to design and then how to design it really gravitated towards strategy, a strategy in a way that made the brand stand out and made the business stand out. And that was my first time really putting together, okay, design, strategy, function, these 3 things, what do they all do? So learning the effects of research and design strategy in business. So this is really, you already saw my bio, but this is sort of what those aspects and what learning all of that design strategy, how it led me to different positions in life and to where I am today. So first, I joined a board of an elementary school, and there I used design to help design the function of the school and what it would be, and the mission and the vision. And the board and I created roadblocks and ideas and just different plans that would help create the school to be what it can be. So that was the first time I've ever seen design used in that way for a nonprofit. After that, I was a design manager. So I was a design manager working with other designers, hiring designers for an advertising company. And that was me seeing how design functions as a team, how it can function in a business. During this time, I was a designer with BCDC Ideas. Awesome time, just learning how design, of course, affects nonprofits. And finally, in this last year, in 2019, I've been a design strategist for a marketing startup. And that was awesome because what we did was we used in-depth research to then design a value proposition and figure out how much it would cost and if we're going to go through with it. So all of these projects, all of these graphic design projects, everything I've done has led me to a better understanding of how design strategy affects business. And this is why I've become so passionate about it. So let's get to the basics and the introduction of design strategy. I like to go through that and just make things clear and practical for everyone. And then we're going to go a little bit more in depth and then application of this. So what is design? Design is a visual and functional catalyst to a planned purpose. So what that means really is that design, yes, is aesthetically pleasing. It is a visual. It is something to look at, for sure. But it also is a functional catalyst. It leads people to do something. It leads people to act. It has a purpose in the reason of it being there. It has a purpose in its existence. It's just not there to just be aesthetically pleasing. So today, design and business, and I'm sure you all have seen these headlines and news headlines talking about how design and business has become this like buzzword and the Silicon Valley thing. And today we're gonna really simplify it. But design and business really means the visual and functional catalysts stem from a deep customer understanding to create relevant, purposeful, and beautiful experiences. So that's a lot, but really what that means is Facebook and Google, these design-led businesses, what they're doing is that they are utilizing a deep customer understanding to then create their visual and functional catalysts. And usually their visual and functional catalysts lead to purposeful and beautiful digital experiences, sometimes in-person experiences, but that's their goal. It all starts from a deep customer understanding. So this is why data rules everything around us these days. All right, so what is strategy? Strategy is the roadmap from where you are to where you want to be. And I've done personal strategies of, okay, this is where I am in my career, here's where I want to be. You definitely do it for your business strategy. So I included this quote from Harvard Business Review, and I'm just going to read it to you guys. A good strategy provides a clear roadmap consisting of a set of guiding principles or rules that defines the actions people in the business should take and not take, and the things they should prioritize and not prioritize to achieve desired goals. So that's strategy in the business realm. It's about being mindful of where you're going and how you're going to get there. So what is design strategy? This is the key question. This is, the creme de la creme. Design strategy is the roadmap that determines how you use design to solve your business challenges. So in other words, if we replace the word design with the definition we just learned earlier, it's really a business learning how to use a deep customer understanding to create visual and functional catalysts that will be used to solve business challenges. So design strategy can be applied to any business challenge, a business strategy as a whole. What is the mission and vision of the company? You can use it as the brand for, or understanding your brand. But today we're going to talk about it in marketing and communications. All right, so a design-led business curates each design touch point to be built on a deep understanding, customer understanding, and purpose and beauty. So a design-led business utilizes design strategy in every aspect of its being. It's in its DNA. And so I included this great graph here on the right, and this is from an article called Understanding Design Strategy by Terry Lee Stone. And what it does is it has every aspect or every design touch point that you can consider when you're creating your design strategy, or at least that can be design strategized. So these are all of the touch points that a company or a nonprofit usually has. And what's missing, I included at the bottom, operations and service. I truly believe those are their own design touch points that you can also design. Either way, this gives a good visual of understanding, hey, here are all the ways you interact with your customers, you interact with your stakeholders. How are you designing these touch points? So this is from McKinsey Consulting. Why design strategy is so important is because it's been proven, and there's still a lot more research that needs to be done, but design-led businesses are outperforming their industry competitors. So design-led businesses outperformed industry benchmark growth by as much as 2 to 1. So twice as fast as other companies increase their revenue and returns, design-led businesses did that twice as fast, which is a huge, huge help, I'm sure. These are, this consulting firm actually studied this in 2018, I believe, or 2019. So this is pretty recent, actually. The next study, and one I found as well, was done in 2016, and it found around the same thing. These companies that utilize design strategy in everything they do, they have a better competitive advantage, they have a greater market share, and they have more satisfied and loyal customers. And so design strategy is definitely used in the big names and the big businesses. Airbnb, GE, Apple, P&G, Google, Facebook, they're all using design in their businesses. And so I am completely and utterly interested in seeing how we can apply this to companies that are trying to do good in the community, or at least smaller SMEs. So when you're creating your design strategy, what does it address? We're going to go in depth and we're going to application later, but just as a whole, a design strategy addresses these 5 things. Number 1, stakeholder experience. KPIs are based on experiences. So KPIs are based on maybe your donors and how they're interacting with you. They're based on, okay, how well did we do? How did we make people feel? Or did we actually have a visceral interaction with these people? Second, changing stakeholder behavior and attitudes. That takes research to know what they are, but once you know what they are, how does your strategy address them? 3, market trends and opportunities. So, of course, market research. Where does your business lie? Where does your design lie in the market? What opportunities do you have to really make a splash in your industry? Your mission and brand. How will the strategy fulfill them? So always, it is still an important thing, and every designer knows that branding is huge for businesses. So how will this design strategy be aligned with who you are as a company and what your brand is? And then finally, how does it solve the actual business challenge it hopes to? So I'm sure these will probably all make a little bit more sense once we get through some examples, but definitely want to include them here while we're trying to understand the basics of design strategy. All right, so what is this presentation about? Today, we're going to talk about how to use a deep customer understanding to create meaningful solutions to communication challenges. You know, we could do that with any other business challenge, but today with communication challenge, we're going to talk about how to research, make sure you don't break the bank doing that, so that you're not spending a ton of money doing that, but it's definitely needed. Then we're going to go into practical steps for applying this and brainstorming, creative thinking, and then finally talk about the types of designers that are out there. And I'm going to have a lot of examples throughout. It'll be really great. So hopefully everyone has a great understanding. You know, always, you know, at the end we're going to do Q&A, and I'd love to talk with everyone and chat about this. But I'm ready to get started. Let's get started. Demystifying design thinking. So the way I understand things is I like to go from the broad, okay, and I'll narrow it down to the practical. So the broad is starting with design thinking, this buzzword, this term that has been used so much, the definition has been muddied completely. So let's really understand what design thinking is. It's important because you have to have the right mindset to create your design strategy, and design thinking gets you in that mindset to be prepared to create something that's purely from a deep customer understanding. All right, so here is design thinking in a nutshell. I think design thinking is used a lot, but here we can go step by step to understand what exactly that term means. So it all starts with empathy and humility. And I'm going to go through these in the next slide. Then it goes to abductive reasoning, where you turn what you've learned with your empathy to an insight. Critical thinking then turns that insight to an actionable plan, creative thinking, and then analytical thinking. So let's go through these step by step. All right, so empathy. Empathy, deep listening, learning. It's about putting yourself in the shoes of the person you want to serve. It's about serving someone else. Whatever you're creating will have to serve someone else. And you have to have empathy to fully understand their perspective. What can I understand about them? Humility is putting yourself aside to do that understanding, to not put yourself and what you want and what you think is needed. You got to let ego go, and you have to understand the truth and the objective truth. And that takes humility to do that. We often get caught up in what we feel we want to design, what we feel is needed. This is what I think it should be. Humility is about putting yourself and what your wants aside and doing that research from that empathy that you have to understand what's really needed for them, what's really needed here. Then we have abductive reasoning, and abductive reasoning is key to any designer. Abductive reasoning takes what you've learned, your observations, and it makes inferences based on good information, small inferences, to come up with insights. This is what we mean when people are saying take your research and make an insight. If you just learn 18 to 50-year-olds drink milk at 3 p.m., random fact, but if you learn that, that's not an insight. An insight is when it can apply to a business milestone or to a life milestone. How does that really affect who we are? So that's what abductive reasoning does. It takes your observations and makes them insights. Critical thinking is insights to action. Critical thinking is when you connect what those insights are to how they affect your business or how they affect you. It's about connecting. So how does this apply to our mission? How does this apply to our brand? What does this mean for us? We have to connect what we've learned and connect it to what we need to do or what's feasible for us to do. Then when you understand what's feasible for you to do, when you understand the limitations that you have, the framework that you've set, then we go into creative thinking. This is where everyone gets excited about design thinking because it's awesome. It's divergent thinking. It is opening your brain, blue sky thinking, brainstorming. This is the free flowing manner where you can sit there and work with your team and understand, okay, we understand what's at stake. We understand what we know. Let's create in this framework. Then finally, once you've completed your design, once you've made it, then you do analytical thinking. And this is usually when you see the word test, when you're testing and reviewing what you created to see if it's a real solution. Did this actually solve what we hope it to solve? And so usually, when you're in the critical thinking stage, hopefully you're applying metrics or thinking about the metrics that you will use later in your analytical thinking to then understand, okay, did this really solve a problem? So this is the thinking involved in design thinking, but that really doesn't matter unless we have practical steps in understanding this. So this is when we get to the design thinking process. Now, this is all of the graphs that you've seen 1,000 times, the process of designing. And so I'm going to give you guys a few examples. I'm sure you've seen them all around. They've become really popular. So IDEO is probably the most famous one, I'd say. But there's Nielsen-Norman Group. They have their own design thinking process where they start with the empathy and they go around. You see the thinking involved. They do humility, they do empathy. Then they go to creative thinking with ideate, prototyping, testing, analytical thinking, and putting it into effect. IDEOs, inspiration, ideation, implementation, same thing. This is the thinking we talked about earlier. A few more. Stanford D School. I like theirs as well, but either way, they talk about empathy, starting with that understanding, research, defining what it is that you learned, then ideating from there. And then there's IBMs. I actually like IBMs. It is the most simple one, and I think they really wanted to stick with simplicity here, but IBMs is, to them, you can start anywhere. You can observe, reflect, make, you can start anywhere on this. It's a continuous loop. You're continuously doing those 3 steps to get to a better design. There are tons of other design thinking processes out there. So what I hope you understand is that all of them really are saying 4 basic things. So many out there. They're all saying the same thing. So here are the 4 things that they're saying. Number 1, learn. Second, connect. Launch. Review. Every design process, you can find these 4 on there. This is what they're doing in a nutshell. Learn. Do your research on the problem and the problem you're solving for, the people you're trying to solve the problem for. 2, connect. Connect what you learn to who you are as a company or who's doing the work or what you need to be done to your goals. Connect it, the critical thinking. 3, launch it, build it out. If you have the time and the money, prototype it. I know sometimes nonprofits don't. Sometimes their learning and connecting has to take longer, so they can just launch something and be done with it. Understandable, but launch the thing, implement it. And then finally, review it. And reviewing is testing it out, is evaluating what you did to understand if it really solved a problem. This is design thinking in a nutshell, okay? Now we can see how the thinking that we talked about earlier applies to this process. Learning is that empathy and humility. Connecting, the critical thinking, the abductive reasoning, where you're taking insights and making them action. Launching, creative thinking. What are we going to make? What's the deliverable? Okay, how's it going to look? Who's going to do it? And then finally, analytical thinking. Review what you've done. Test it out. Did it work out? What are the metrics? Were they met? And that's it. You know, I really think it's important not to muddy the waters. These are 4 things every process is saying. We can see how the thinking is involved in it, and this is design in a nutshell. But the most important part of it, research. Research is key. That learn step, hey, that's key to everything. That's what Facebook and Google are competing over. That's what the big 4 or any other company that's design-led, that's what they're competing over. When we're talking about data, that's them talking about research. That's them talking about knowing their customers better than the other guy. Research is key. So there's so many different ways to do research. Market research. When I was in Denmark, that's what I did to, I think it did help for me winning the award, but it's not always needed. But market research, reading psychographic studies. Yeah, look them up. Look up what psychologists have said about the target demographic. Demographic information also helps. Observation. This is free. You go and you sit with the people, or you look at the people and you study. You take notes. You do a full ethnography like an anthropologist. Study them. Understand why they do what they do. I understand how they act and how they interact and what their actions have to do with the problem you're hoping to solve. And then interviews. Interviews are fun, in my opinion. When I was a board member with QAI, I interviewed a ton of parents and teachers to understand, okay, what's your relationship with this school? How can we make this school better? So those are like 3 ways you can definitely research and just get ahead as a company or an organization. Without research, you create out of opinion. So I'm going to give you guys an example of creating out of opinion. I feel like we need a new look. That's what I definitely heard working as a designer. I've heard it from business leaders before, communicators before. It is a felt need. Here's another example. No one's energized like they were when we first got started. I feel like if we had a new look, everything will work out. Or I feel like we just need to do a social media campaign. I don't see why not. Let's just work on that. These are examples of felt needs. They're not based on research. They're based on, I have an inkling. And that's okay. It is okay to have an inkling. I think your instincts are strong and made for a reason. But you got to back it up with facts. You got to back it up with research. Because when you operate out of felt needs, you create immeasurable, unsustainable felt results. Felt needs make felt results. I felt like we need to do this. I feel like it didn't work. Or I felt like we need to do that, and I feel like it will work. Your business does not operate off of felt results. Your business, your organization, your team, they operate out of hard facts. They operate out of numbers. They operate out of data. So to have that why, to have that understanding, you need to do research. This is why research is really key to doing amazing design. So I included this quote, and it's from Terry Lee Stone, who I talked about earlier, another design strategist like me. And so this quote is, whichever research method you use, these findings help the designer understand key differentiators for the client and for the product or service in order to visualize an approach that capitalizes on these insights. Your research provides the lanes your design team, your designer, or you can go down to make sure, hey, this is the best route. These are the lanes we found with the research. Hey, this is the best way to go. This is how we're going to capitalize on what we're doing. This is how we're going to capitalize on what we found out. You can't do that without the research. So I think I've said research enough. Let's move on. All right, so now we're going to talk about applying this design process to communication challenges. So I said earlier, design strategy really can be applied to a ton of business challenges, but today we're going to talk about communication challenges. All right, so first, do we have a communications problem? This is where we're going to go into the learning. 2, what message do we need to send? How will we design the message we send? And finally, did it work? Did it do anything for us? All right, so we're going to go through these a little bit more in depth. Number 1, do you have a communications problem? This is the time to check your message delivery status. Evaluate what's going on. Either put out fires or really, it's awesome to be proactive. Understand, well, where do we want our communications to be? How will you reach the next generation of your target demographic or the next generation of donors? What metrics are you using to know if you're reaching them, or what metrics are you using to know if their experience is the one that you hope it for it to be? Do you reach them? Do they know what you do? Can they tell you what you do back to you? Check to see if you have that communications issue. Now, what message needs to be sent? So not much is here because that should be apparent from your research to understand, okay, well, this is the message we need to send. That's all based on the problem, or it's all based on at least an understanding of, okay, these are the people we need to interact with. This is what we want them to know about us. All right, so it's time for a personal example. This is a personal example from my life. And then I worked with an nonprofit to understand their engagement strategy. So this is me applying design thinking and design strategy in real life. Here we go. All right, so here's the context. This is a nonprofit, and their stakeholder retention was declining quickly, month by month. We were losing folks left and right. Employees, donors, we were losing everybody. And we couldn't figure out why. We had an inkling, we had an idea, we didn't know for sure, but we just knew, hey, we got to act quickly and we got to act in a way that's definitely strategic to help the business out. So I was leading the research development in this stage of the research design. I conducted semi-structured interviews and exit interviews, talking with people, asking them what's going on-site observation, what I talked about earlier. Look at the problem as much as you can, stare at it, what's really going on, and then ethnographies. I went home with folks. I understood what's their relationship to the organization. How is it changing? What was it before and what is it now? How did it change? All right, so from all that research, we figured out what the problem was. There was a lack of transparency and communication from leadership, and it made the stakeholders feel disrespected, in the dark. They felt like leadership does stuff and doesn't tell us anything. Leadership does stuff and they don't care if we know or not. Leadership, they're not even a part of what we do. They don't do half of what we do. They felt completely disrespected by the leadership members in that regard. Not that they were actively doing that, but that's how they felt. That's how people felt. That's why they were leaving the organization. So we created a solution from that. The first solution was to create a digital solution. It was quick, it was fast, we knew how to do it. It took time though, it definitely took time and resources. But it came from an understanding of the problem, and we'll learn later, it was an understanding of the problem, but not how the problem became a problem. So this was a huge deal, it became high priority. We launched this sort of interactive digital Kanban board that would consistently tell stakeholders what leadership was making decisions on, at least where leadership was, what they were thinking, what they were going to vote on. It was this digital experience, and we're thinking, great, what can you say against that? High tech, technology. What do you guys, think happened? stakeholder retention continued to decline. It didn't work. It did nothing. People didn't even know about it. It was ineffective. It was barely recognized. That was when I, as a designer, learned this huge lesson. And I learned that it's great to know the problem, but it's awesome to research how the problem should be solved for your audience. So there's the golden rule, that you treat people the way you want to be treated. And I think that is an old rule. I think today businesses and people are now learning the platinum rule. That's what I'm calling it. I'm trademarking it and taking it. The platinum rule is you treat people the way they want to be treated. So I had to learn, how did this audience, these stakeholders, want to be treated? So did more interviews, did more research, and I learned a few things. Took those learnings, connected them with the business, and we created a second solution. The second solution was much less costly. Simply, we redesigned how leadership communicates with stakeholders through meetings, events, meetups. Now, I know everyone hates an unnecessary meeting, but this was more informal. This was more, okay, hey, meet a board member, or meet this director and take time and eat sometimes pizza, sometimes it was just, pizza and soda. But either way, it was just a way of getting the leadership out and in person with the stakeholders in a way that felt real and authentic to who they were and how it worked. This solution worked, and it came from an understanding of how the problem became a problem. The stakeholders interacted with each other in a way that was very familial and communal. They talked face to face. Anytime they emailed, it was only to email to set up a meeting. They loved meetings. I know that's rare, but hey, that's how they work. They loved meetings. They loved talking with each other, getting to know each other. Sometimes they drove each other's kids home. It was a community, and they felt like leadership who didn't participate in that community and that family feeling were really just this stale outside figure that they felt, you're not a part of us. And if you're going to be leading us, you have to be a part of us. And so redesigning how leadership acted and communicated with stakeholders was what really set the bar, was what really changed everything. And so we started getting feedback like this. I know you care because I see you. That feeling of disrespect was gone. Stakeholders felt, okay, great, you're here, you get it, you're a part of us, you're a part of the family. And since then, I haven't worked with that organization for a while, but I have heard that their stakeholder retention has gone up since this project, and that's awesome. So it really goes to show how you have to learn what needs to be designed, but that was a huge lesson in our third point, and here it is now. How will you design it? This is when you have to take time to understand what you will launch. What is the deliverable? So we've all been to meetings that should have been emails. They should have been, and that's a really minute, microscopic example of someone who is knowing they have to send the message, know they have a problem. All right, great. Now I know I have to give this message to these people, but I'm not thinking about the best way they will receive it. So we saw that in my last example. What I want to talk to you guys about is maybe ways that you can do this with your organization that are a little bit more design thought and more creative. So back to this graph, and I know I showed this earlier, but I'm bringing this up now because when you consider all the design touch points, there are also possible deliverables. There are also possible ways that you can be reaching your demographic, whoever it might be. It might be your employees. It might be another team, another department. Here are all the different ways as well that you can, of course, interact with them and choose how they will interact with you and the message you want to send. But there are creative ways of doing it. And so I like to think about human-centered design. I know that that's another buzz term, but it's pretty much everything we described today, but making sure your research is very much tied to psychographic and human information. So when you're sending a message as a human being, you're talking to someone and you're hoping they're going to retain that message that they're sending. And there are three ways us as human beings we retain messages. And that's, the three learning styles we've all heard. Learning style really to me is just, hey, this is the way I retain messages. Visually, auditorily, kinesthetically. Okay, so visually, thought I'd throw in a gift to wake anybody up. That's saying hi, right? Auditorily, you just say it. Hi, hello, guten Tag. And then kinesthetically, fist bump, a wave sort of thing. But kinesthetically is that they had to sense that you were saying hi instead of seeing it. So this is the way we as humans send messages. And so in the same way, you as a business or an organization, you can send messages that will become visceral, that will tie to a person's senses and how they retain messages. So this is the way businesses can do that. Visually, that's where you see graphic design and illustration. Illustration is used to explain something that words probably would take too long to do. Words can always do it, but illustration can give you that idea quickly. And when you see it, editorial illustration, you get the idea of the article right there in that image. Photography, videography, a 3D prototype, a dollhouse, whatever it is, visually I have to look at it and now I get it. All right, so then auditorily, and this is kind of new, this is kind of becoming a trend. Podcasts, music, radio, podcasts are blowing up right now. But that's when they were organizations, the people, whoever it is, they decided, man, the best way for us to tell you all about this is if we just talk about it. And then finally, kinesthetically. Kinesthetically are through events, brand activation, guerrilla marketing. This is when you are enwrapping your audience in an experience that titillates their senses, that makes them feel it, that they're there and they're experiencing it with their physical bodies, or at least through a digital experience that makes it feel physical. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few examples of nonprofits doing just these things. Visually, this is a poster or part of a poster from Plan International. And what they wanted to do was tell more people about female genital mutilation. And so they used sort of origami to remind you of what's at stake, remind you of the subject matter, but not do it in a way that's just a picture of what's happening. You get a sense of what's happening, and you get a sense of how it's tearing these women apart and the body parts that are being mutilated. So I thought this was a great example of them designing their message in a way that is visual, but I definitely get what this is doing to these women. And I definitely understand what's at stake. Auditorily, now this was really cool to me. Wendy's, they made a mixtape. Yes, they did. And you can go listen to it. I believe it's still on Spotify. But they made a mixtape and it's like trap beats and that kind of thing. But they decided we want to send a message, and I'm pretty sure their message wasn't just to send, okay, let's make music. It was a message to send to their audience, hey, we're hip, we're cool, we're, whatever trendy word you want to use, and we're making a mixtape and a beat to show you that. And that message, came loud and clear. This became viral, and I suggest you listen to it. It is really fun. But you can do this as well. And then kinesthetically, so I'm not going to describe this. I want to play this video. Hopefully you all can hear the audio. Please comment if you can't. Okay, I'm going to hit play and let's see. Oh.
The birth poster that accepts credit cards. The poster makes giving easier than ever before, and you can see the results. Your donation can provide daily bread for a family in Peru, or help an imprisoned Filipino child return to a normal life, all for just €2. These unique billboards were developed together with Stripe.com, a leader in innovative payment solutions. The posters initially attracted people's attention in international airports, but stayed with them long after. When donors received their credit card statement, they were asked to turn their one-off donation into a monthly donation. It's a small gesture that makes a big difference. The social swipe, making giving easier than ever before.
All right. So, I mean, that was really cool. You know, that campaign really puts you in a place where you're understanding exactly what you're giving. You understand why giving is what it is. You're not just throwing money at anything. You're creating help and you're benefiting these families. And I think that message was really sent there. So that's an awesome example of an organization using kinesthetic ways to say something more than just, hey, donate. They're saying, okay, donate, and this is what your donations do. And here's an experience to show you exactly what we mean. So these are the kind of ways I hope that you and your organization think of marketing and communications. Okay, so did the design work? That's the last and final step. Review what you've done. Check out the metrics. Okay, what metrics did you use to determine if your design made an impact? Did it solve the business problem? To what degree? Did it completely solve it? Did it tweak it? Did it, maybe 30% of it's done? Was the message relevant? Was it purposeful? Did you really hit the people you want to hit? And so that's why it's definitely important to understand, when you're strategizing. First off, when you're doing that critical thinking, hey, what are the metrics we're going to use to measure if this works or not? All right, another example. We've done all the work, we've understand how to apply design thinking to marketing and communications. Now I'm going to give you guys an awesome example and a fun example of how another nonprofit did the same thing. How they took this thinking, and you can really see it in what they created to create this and design this awesome experience. And so what I love about this example is that this is an organization that acted proactively. This isn't a reactive answer or solution to an already existing problem. No, this was a proactive. How are we going to reach the next generation? Let's start working on that right now. This is them doing this. All right, so context. The New York Public Library wanted to reach out of its usual customer base to convince more people to read books. So when I read further, they are really trying to get that next generation to start reading more books. And so they partnered with the agency Mother New York to design a solution. And Mother New York is a design agency. So what did they learn? Starting off with our process. So they first learned, okay, where are people? We have to meet them where they are. People are on social media. Social media, and you can see on the second quote, the rise of social media has caused this, decline in attention spans, taking time away from print, and definitely making people more consuming more digital experiences. And so how can we keep up? So they first had to find out where people were. So they said social channels like Instagram and Facebook. Okay, so how do we meet them where they are? How do we create a digital experience that gets more people to read more books? So that's them connecting what they learned with what they want to do. And so from this research, from this understanding, they launched something called Insta Novels. And it's placing full books, full page, the whole book, classic books on their Instagram stories. And this, really took off. Okay, so here you can get a better understanding. It's sort of like this, right? They have these books and they're in the Instagram stories, and they utilize motion design and design to design the covers of the books. And then when you're flipping through, and you'll see in that second picture, okay, yeah, you see it, the full novel, you'll flip through and you actually will go through the full novel. And I know someone might be thinking, who is going to read a whole book on an Instagram story? But people read it, okay? This was really popular. Here it is again, and trying to understand if you have a fuller understanding of exactly what they did. So there's the cover, there's the table of contents, you keep flipping through, there's the whole book, and you go through it. And they did this for about, I think it was about 5 books, 4 or 5 books. And you can really see in the thinking behind this awesome and really viral design that they were thinking about research, that they were thinking with design thinking, and all of the elements of design thinking are apparent in these quotes. So their mission wasn't to have followers just for followers' sake. It was about inspiring this new community to engage with their local library and read more. And I think they definitely did inspire people. That was what it was about, utilizing that motion design to really suck you in and to want to read that book. And so I'm going to read that last quote by someone who worked at Mother Design, the agency. Every single part of the design was tailored to make the story the most entertaining, to make it the most simple to use, and to make it the most natural within the environment of Instagram. So there you really get them critically thinking and creatively thinking, okay, how do we inspire this new community? Okay, how can we make sure every aspect of this design connects with our research of what people expect, what people enjoy, what people maybe not expecting, and how we can inspire them. Every aspect of the design was really tailored to the story and really tailored to the audience. So with all of that and that awesome launch, let's review their impact. They received 13,000 followers in just 24 hours. Now, it's not about the followers, but that's a lot of followers. They received 300,000 instant novels that were read since, I'm going to say in about a year, after a year. So 300,000 times, those 5 books, or maybe someone read 1 book, 300,000 times people opened that instant novel and read that book. And they got tons of unpaid media coverage. New York Times, Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Fast Company. Everyone wrote about this because it was so inspiring and done so well. And that really shows, man, you can receive a ton of coverage, media coverage, you can receive a ton of followings, you can receive a ton of results, beneficial results, when you really design well. Okay, so now we're going to get into working with designers. This is fun, this is good, let's get started. There are 2 types of designers. Yes, they all have jobs and everyone has a different title, but a design-led business partners with both. All right, so a strategic designer, and this encompasses a lot of different job titles, but their function in the business is to create the vision to be produced. They do design directing. And so the most obvious and the strategic designers most people are familiar with are creative directors and art directors, but there are chief design officers. They have one at Capital One. There are design strategists like me when I work with a startup, or business designers, where I work with your business to understand the vision and how design affects your overall business as a whole and your business strategy. So that's what a strategic designer does. They focus on the vision to be produced. When do I partner with a strategic designer? Here are the 4, maybe I think most common ways when you would know, oh, I need a strategic designer in the room. First, if you're a large organization creating an internal innovation hub, that's, I would say P&G, GE, these types of huge or larger companies. You don't have to be famous to be that, but a large organization where you need an internal team to just simply focus on innovating the company as a whole. 2, if you're an organization, no matter what size you are, with legacy systems looking to redesign and become design-led. And so that's if you're maybe a nonprofit or a for-profit organization, you've been in business for a while, and you need to become a design-led business, but you need someone to lead that direction, to lead that effort. That's when you bring in a strategic designer. That would be someone like me. 3, if you're a startup seeking design leadership, if you're starting your company now, if you're a small business, if you're starting it and you need design to get to that next level to really compete in the industry, then you're partnering with a strategic designer to be a part of your leadership team, a C-level person. And then finally, just like with the New York Public Library, they partnered with Mother New York, which has both strategic and tactical designers, to create their campaign, to create their marketing and their campaign design. All right, so tactical designers. Tactical designers produce the designs. These are invaluable visual problem solvers. And so these are the designers most people are aware of and use. Motion designers, illustrators, graphic designers, the people who are actually creating the visuals and the production involved in getting you from step 1 to step 2. Here's when you partner with a tactical designer. Number 1, when you're building your organization's design team or creative team, when you know you need designers, you hire tactical designers, and then you hire strategic designers to help lead those tactical designers. 2, when you have a creative brief and you need it to be executed. Not every organization has the budget to hire or create a team. That's fine. But you have a brief, you have an understanding of what you do want done, then that's when you usually see a business contracting and hopefully hiring a tactical designer, a graphic designer, illustrator, whoever it might be, to fulfill the brief they have. And then finally, again, marketing and campaign design. Just like with New York, they hired an agency with both tactical and strategic designers. All right, so you're part of an agency, maybe you're part of an organization, maybe it's just you and you're a business owner. You have to know how to talk to those designers and get them to do what you want them to do. So here's why you're writing a creative brief. They are very important. Now, I'm going to give you a few examples of some briefs, I'm going to put that in quotes, bad briefs I received. You're the designer. I'm not creative at all. Just look at the brand guidelines for reference and send me what you come up with. Or someone else. We just want something edgy and trendy to reach the millennials, and our ED really likes blue, so if you could just throw that in there, that'd be great. These aren't briefs, but these people, of course, meant well, but they were just coming from their understanding. Hey, look, you know it, you got it, you do it. But when you create design out of that, you're not ending up with the results and the impact the organization really needs. Limitations provided by research and then outlined in a creative brief become the lanes that direct designers toward an impactful solution for your business. This is really important. This is why a creative brief gets you to where you want your business to be. If you're hiring designers and you cannot tell or be able to articulate what they did or what their work did for your business, then it sounds like you have not understand the effects of design in your business, or at least outlined what design is supposed to do for your business, how it's supposed to be a solution for your business. Sometimes you can waste money and time that way, okay? So we need a creative brief. Don't worry about making it this long, amazing thing. A creative brief simply should answer these 3 questions. Number 1, what is the deliverable and what do you want it to do? Simple. What is it? What do you want it to do? Second, who is the audience? How do you want them to interact with that deliverable? Who are you trying to reach? How will they feel? How will they be affected by this thing existing? And number 3, what problem does this deliverable solve for your business? Where does this design lie in your overall business strategy? So I wanted to give you guys an example of some good briefs. And so I found these briefs, actually it was for advertising. These are for advertising students, but that's really fine. You know, creative brief is a creative brief. So here's a few examples, and we're going to start off with Hellman's. And you can see those 3 aspects that I just said are in this brief. So what problem does the deliverable solve for your business? You see it here and they put it in the background. Here's why they're creating this campaign. Second, what is the deliverable and what do you want it to do? And it's highlighted right there. We want a branded device, publication, or service that addresses the issue of food wastage. So when they talked about what it's supposed to do for the business, it's really supposed to help people find things like innovative recipes to incorporate Hellman's products to use up the food that could have been wasted. Okay, so here's the deliverable to do that. And then finally, who is the audience receiving this? How did you want them to react with it? And so they said it's for consumers or businesses who want to save money and reduce their environmental impact by not throwing good food away. It's a very broad audience, but either way, it's an audience. And so the rest of the brief just goes into things that they want the designer to keep in mind. But at least those 3 questions are answered. The designer can go from there to create something amazing. All right, second example, this is my last example. This is for, I believe it's a brewery and distillery in the UK. And so here's their brief. And they wanted it to be answered through graphic design and a campaign. But either way, the first question, what is the deliverable and what do you want it to do? It's highlighted there. They want a campaign that shows a message or creates a message around craft, around them understanding sustainability, and they want it to include offline and online touch points, so a digital and offline experience. What is it going to do for their business? Well, it's to help them create a strong connection with a new generation of drinkers. They want them to know this brewery and distillery as sustainable, as hip and new, as something to be a part of their culture. And then finally, who is that audience and how do you want them to interact? And in this brief, they went a little bit more in depth. They gave the age, the demographics, 18 to 50-year-olds, and this information that they have here, that they enjoy premium quality, sustainability, drives their choice of products. They got that from research. They did the research first to understand that audience and what's at stake for that audience, to be able to write this brief for their designers and for their designers to know how to go from there and create something impactful for their business. So those are examples of great briefs. Now, you've written the brief, you told your designer what to do, but I have honestly received this quote from many business leaders. I'm not a designer, I don't know what to look for. That's fine. You do not have to have a degree in art or design to understand if your designer did their job. You only have to know if the answer is yes to these 3 questions. That's it. If you can answer yes to all of these questions, your designer, whoever it is in your team or someone you're contracting or the agency you're working with, they did their job. So here's how you know. Is it functional? Does it do what you want it to do? Did it fulfill the brief? Is it aesthetically pleasing? Do you enjoy looking at it? Can you read the text? Is it too small? Did they fit a paragraph on a sticker? And then finally, is it reflective? Does it reflect who you are as a brand? Does it reflect your mission and where you want to go? And that's it. If you can answer yes by taking a hard look at that design, they did their job. And this is also great guidelines for us as designers to make sure we're always doing our work for these organizations. So let's start talking about you. Let's start talking about your organization specifically. So I'm going to do a small review. We went through design thinking. We talked about how it starts with empathy, how it becomes stronger with humility, how you take those observations, make them insights through abductive reasoning, and then how you critically think and take those insights to action. Once you create a plan, then you creatively think. Then you can sit there and come up with all these ideas and then analyze everything you made. Then we applied that thinking to a process. Learn what you're going to do, connect it with what it means to your business, launch it, prototype it, test it, whatever you have the budget for, and then review that. Analyze those things. Then we talked about the 2 types of designers and that a design-led business partners with both and utilizes everything we talked about today into the DNA of who the business is. So, where is design strategy in your organization? A design-led business grasps these methods, these principles, these thinking of design into the DNA of the company. It is in everything they do. They start everything off with a deep understanding of what's at stake, who we're doing it for, what this means to the business. That is what a design-led business does. So I included this graphic so you can try to understand where your organization lies. So there are 4 ways design can live in your organization, and we're going to talk about it. First, absent. There's no design beyond basic branding. You just have your logo and your brand, and that's it. Maybe your brand guidelines, but design in any other aspect, it's just not there. Ad hoc. Ad hoc, I've seen a lot of nonprofits be in. Ad hoc is when design is used specifically and only for aesthetics. It's not embedded in any type of thinking or design thinking or strategy. It's not embedded in the leadership. It's really just, we hire designers to make this poster, to do this sort of thing. And it's usually outsourced when the internal team cannot handle it, if there is a team. Established. You have a design team. You have a design team that has both tactical and strategic designers. You have people who create the vision and then people who actually fulfill the vision. And it doesn't go as far as the whole company, but it's a part of the marketing. At least when you're doing external communications, that's when you know you're using design thinking. That's an established design strategy organization. But what I hope for you to be, and what's really leading the industry now, are companies that using design strategy as a strategic differentiator. Really a differentiator in their market. And so that's when design is used to really set the company apart from other companies. It is extended throughout the company as a whole. It's not just in the marketing and communications. It is in how we do our operations, how we work within our employees, our internal communications. It's in how we think in everything. These are the companies that are sort of leading the industry these days. So for you to get from absent to differentiator, it is awesome to apply what we learned today to what you're doing, hopefully in your marketing communications, but also it can be in your operations. It can be in all parts of your business. Design is more than a feeling. It is a CEO level priority for growth and long-term performance. That's what it is today. Yes, it does help your aesthetics, but it can more than for sure help your business. And we're learning that today in the news, but how does it apply to your organization? So yes, please visit my website. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I really do. I love talking about designing. I'm Symone Fogg. I focus on business design and applying this thinking to business challenges. And I'd love to do it with your organization. Feel free. I want to hear from you. I want to talk about your problems. I want to talk about how we can take this organization to the next level. I do that through value proposition design, creating new business models, business strategy, and making sure everything I do is based in the deep understanding, insights, and research, and making sure everything is design, thought, design, strategize. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I'm so happy we got through it. I'm not sure, let's see the time. Not sure what time it is, but oh, okay, 3:09, not too much, not too bad, not too shabby.
Yeah,
so I wanted
we're doing okay.
yeah, okay, well, I wanted to do a question and answers if anyone has any.
Yeah, we'll be on for the next 5 minutes if anybody wants to ask a question in the chat. I know, Symone, is there anything right now with all of the, coronavirus reactions and things, is there anything that you think needs more design thinking?
Yeah, I think we can all agree. Maybe understanding there's a few things. So I'm sure a lot of design thinking is needed with how we're going to solve this, how we're going to get everyone to maybe get a mask. That's a microscopic answer. But honestly, how businesses are going to thrive in this. I hate it for all of the businesses that, of course, we're basing their location and their operations on foot traffic. So now you have to think about, okay, without foot traffic, how do I survive? And that's like this huge question. I'm not saying I have the answer to, but I definitely think we can all work together to get there. This is a question from Marcella. It says, can you talk about how you would have approached the logo project from the beginning differently in hindsight? Oh, okay. So I think you're asking about that logo project I did when I first gave my personal history. So yeah. So this was the example where I was creating like 24 logos for this nonprofit. And looking back, totally, I would have asked them to help me understand what the logo was supposed to do for the business. why they chose for me to work with it. So when we're talking about that brief, I would have asked them the brief questions. They didn't give me a brief. They just hired me and said, hey, we want to rebrand. Can you make us a logo? And that, you know, that often happens. But I would have asked them, so what does this mean for your business? Why now? Why did you choose to do this now? And how does this affect your overall goals? You know, your goals for the future, your goals for your organization. How does it affect it? Where does this lie? And I'm pretty sure looking back, they would not have an answer for me. They wouldn't, because now looking back, I'm like, I shouldn't have started that project. They didn't have an answer for those questions. They just asked me to make a logo, and I didn't know at the time to ask, well, why? So yeah, that I would have gone about it differently, and I don't think I probably would have worked so hard on that project, or I probably wouldn't have worked on it at all. They probably would have recognized right then, hey, we actually don't need this right now. So yeah, that could have gone much differently. Thank you for asking.
Well, thank you so much, Symone. You are fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your brains and also just being here in this time. I think we're all very lucky to have you as part of this world.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for this opportunity. I really hope Create Good. I know everyone, I want everyone to go to Create Good this year. You all can, since it's online. That is an awesome conference to meet people who are like-minded, who really want to help the community and use communications to do so. So I'm just glad to be a part of that community. Thank you all.
Thank you. Everybody have a productive week. See you soon.
See you.
Bye.